We are in day 2 of the Supreme Court nomination hearings for Amy Coney Barrett. And you should be tuning in so that you can find out all of the different things that she won't tell you what she thinks about or how she'll rule or literally anything. If you want to learn nothing, tune in live. But that doesn't mean that we haven't learned anything, just mostly through her not opining. So as an example of that, here's an important one. What does she think about Trump trying to delay the election? Sort of as a placeholder for all these questions about what Trump might be willing to do around the election. Well, here's Dianne Feinstein asking about that.
Does the Constitution give the President of the United States the authority to unilaterally delay a general election under any circumstances? Does federal law?
Well, Senator, if that question ever came before me, I would need to hear arguments from the litigants and read briefs and consult with my law clerks and talk to my colleagues and go through the opinion writing process. So, if I give off the cuff answers, then I would be basically a legal pundit. And I don't think we want judges to be legal pundits. I think we want judges to approach cases thoughtfully and with an open mind.
Okay, so Adrian, you're the expert. What do you think about that? How should we respond to her not? She didn't give anything away about what she thinks about Trump in the election there.
Okay, so generally judges do not opine on how they would rule in the future when they are Supreme Court nominees sitting before Congress in a confirmation hearing. That is very much standard practice to punt. For many reasons. In part, it also kind of violates judicial ethics to talk about how you would rule. And so that makes sense. But for her not to address something that is outlined in the Constitution and is clear about who has the power to extend these elections, that's signaling a little bit of problems here. But there were a few other instances in which she could have answered something because it is a set fact and she decided to punt.
Yeah, so look, you're being very fair there, and I get it. She can't, like, it would to say, can he do that? Sounds specific, but in reality, it's probably not very specific, and she would need to know the ins and outs of the blah, 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 and specifically all that stuff. But she didn't say anything about the role of the president in affecting the timing or nature of the election. Like, she wouldn't give anything away. And while I agree that obviously she can't say certain things, at a certain point, as we're gonna go through more of these that she won't say what she actually thinks, it makes me wonder then what is the point of these hearings? If she won't give us any idea of what her philosophy is other than some sort of vague assertion that she's going to go with the original word of the Constitution, which by the way would leave her unable to vote, let alone hold a seat on the Supreme Court, which seems like an implicit acknowledgement that there are fundamental problems there that maybe we should continue to look into. She's gonna pretend that we don't have to, while obviously missing that big one. Others remain. So what's the point of these hearings? Is it just supposed to be her weathering the storm until they get to put her on there? Is there no role for the people to actually learn who these people that they don't get to vote on, that are gonna hold that position for 50 plus years, actually believe about all this?
You know what? I believe that this is an opportunity for them to see how she operates under pressure. It's a question of whether members of Congress are gonna do anything with that information. We got to see how Brett Kavanaugh was handled in his very juvenile antics and aggressive behavior and nastiness. That should have told members of Congress enough about how they need to vote when it comes to him being a nominee. And we get to see her, Amy Coney Barrett, up here. And also we get to see the lengths to which her knowledge, the breadth of it. And it is expansive. And also, again, she's not working off of any notes. And also her ability to recall, to articulate, to have these conversations, to remain poised. Those are things that you would want from a judge. And so she definitely has more of the performative behavioral aspects down, which is something that members of Congress take into account.
Yeah, before we move on to other issues that she wouldn't tell us what she actually thinks about, I am curious what you think about the concept that she's gone around about originalism, how she's going to interpret. My issue for a very long time has been that one, there's like you can say that is your judicial philosophy, But there's nothing in the Constitution that says that judges need to look at the Constitution in that way. So hypothetically, that just seems like your choice, man, to me. The other is that it seems as if they're saying, I'm going to go with the specific wording of the Constitution, but the Constitution is notoriously vague and ill-defined on very important topics. Now, I've never been to law school. I don't really know anything about anything, but those seem like pretty big issues.
No, and you're absolutely right. It is completely the judge's choice in terms of what kind of legal theories they want to apply and the lens that they want to use. And she chooses to use the lens of this originalist thought of, let me put myself in the position of the framers of the Constitution and figure out how they would have interpreted things. And that can be very limiting in part because, well, we know the original framers were white men who enjoyed oppression and hypocrisy. And so to actually put yourself in their positions and then use that to interpret the language of the text itself is very problematic because we no longer live in a world where their mentality should be dominant. And she also uses something that Gorsuch uses, which Scalia did use as well, which is this textualism, which means I'm gonna look at the plain language of what's written in those words. And the problematic nature of that is that you are literally just taking the plain language. Not a big deal, or not a big fan of legislative history in terms of what did Congress say about this behind closed doors or in hearings to try to understand what they meant from this word. Instead, let's just see what the plain language is. And that is also very limiting. It's a very hands-off approach, both of them, originalism and textualism, but this is what she prefers.
Yeah, and I would argue that I think it's just a smokescreen. Like, you can't take the plain language of all of the various references to political speech in the Constitution when whole technologies didn't exist. The plain language has nothing to say about these things because the people who were writing this could never have conceived of these technologies or platforms or anything even existing, let alone the fundamental issue of just saying, let's just go with whatever these guys wanted when many of them owned slaves, raped slaves, dueled and murdered people. There are some fundamental ethical issues with them as individuals to begin with. Yeah, I have an issue with it. I will on the content of the video that we saw though, I only wanted to add once more, it's not gonna come as news to anyone watching the show, but it's in the top 3 biggest issues, and it's the #1 short-term issue with Amy Coney Barrett is, I don't think that Trump would have signed off on her being the nominee if she hadn't been very explicit about what she was going to do with any election-related cases that came before her. If she's railroaded onto the Supreme Court in the next week or 2, and then he starts challenging things. That's me, again, as a legal nobody. Adrian, what do you think about the prospects that she could be on the court to rule on election-related cases involving the president who just put her on the court?
Okay. So I definitely think that could happen. My hope, and it may be naive or wishful thinking, is that she'll turn out to kind of be an Earl Warren, where she does this whole, I'm a Republican, let's get this done, put me on the court, and I'm gonna do exactly what you want me to. And then once on the court, all of a sudden, it's just unleashing all democracy and doing the right thing. I'm praying that because Earl Warren did it and it was so beautiful. He gave us Brown v. Board, Miranda v. Arizona. The civil liberties that we have in part today come from a man who was the Republican governor of California. He was putting the Japanese in internment camps, which he apologized for, and a lot of other things. But the moment he got on that court, my God, did he render justice and democracy in a beautiful way. And so I am praying that Amy Coney Barrett will embody that same spirit, get on that court and do the right thing. Because the reality is we just saw Gorsuch write this opinion for the Supreme Court, extending Title VII civil rights law, workplace discrimination to LGBTQ. And Gorsuch is supposed to be Republican. He went against the Trump administration. He's also a contextualist or textualism and originalist. So you never know where they could go once they get that full lifetime appointment of being on SCOTUS.
So no, that's really interesting though. But let me ask you, is that just a hope, like disconnected from everything, or is there anything about her specifically, her experience, her rulings, anything that lead you to have that hope? Is it a grounded hope? Is basically what I'm asking.
No, it's just wishful thinking. If we've seen anything from her rulings, she goes full on conservative. So the thought she might break course, who knows? Because also the reality is that Justice Ginsburg was pretty conservative, a little bit and less spicy in her rulings until Sandra Day O'Connor left. And also we've seen Chief Justice Roberts now become that swing vote. So you never know, once they get up there, they could go full throttle, because what you gonna do to me is the mindset that some of these judges get when they get up there. And so I am praying, and this, again, not grounded in anything but my hopes of hopes, but hey, 2020 cannot take hope from me. Keep it alive.
That's amazing. Okay, I will have that hope as one component of what I am, the broken shell that I am. It'll have a little bit of that hope floating around it. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.